Council adopt the agendas for the meeting of July 3rd, 2018.
All those in favor? Yeah, day weekend. I extend a big thank you to everyone who did the battle you've been this past month and our community celebration. I hope you all enjoyed the work and have a safe weekend. I seen such great condition. Great job, Mr. Dre. Thank you. And a very big thank you to Ginger DeRushi, who basically stood out her head and pulled this whole weekend together, both for the shuffle and our Canada Day celebration. I'm so thankful to Ginger for the work that she did. And that's about it for that weekend. Okay, the Thorold Community Pool is open, and there is still time to register your children for swim lessons. We have revamped the pool schedule and programs to bring our residents more. New this year is an aquafit program in the morning, senior swim in the afternoon, and an adult/lane swim in the evenings. And public swimming hours have changed. For complete details about the changes to the pool schedule or for information about swimming lessons, please go to Thorold.com and search Thorold Community Pool. That concludes my remarks. And our regional councilors in here for an update. I'll move into the adoption of the minutes. Regular council meeting minutes of June 19, 2018. I'll call on Councillor Ugolini.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Neal, that the regular council meeting minutes of July 19th, 2018 be hereby adopted.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any items for discussion in these minutes? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. General Committee meeting minutes of June 19th, 2018. Councillor Pion.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Ugolini, that the General Committee meeting minutes of June 19th, 2018 be hereby adopted.
Thank you, Councillor. Again, are there any items for discussion? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. General Committee meeting minutes of June 19, 2018. Councillor Longo.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Ugolini, that the General Committee meeting minutes of June 19, 2018 be hereby adopted.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Are there any conflicts of interest, councillors? Seeing none, I'll continue. We have no public meetings, no civic recognitions, and there are no presentations. So we'll move into motions for support. Nothing. Statement by councillors. And I have who? I have Councillor Whalen, then Councillor Ugolini.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've had requests from some residents up in Port Robinson with respect to the CN blocking Canby Street and Bigger Road on the other end. So I was wondering if I could get a staff report and see what we can do to alleviate the problem, just in case we have something like we had down in Quebec a few years ago.
That work is presently...
Is it still pending?
It's all being worked out as we speak. I'll ask Mr. Dawadia to give you a bit of an explanation.
That'd be appreciated.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had meetings with CN. We also met with the resident from Port Robinson, Mr. Lepera, ex-councillor and the resident there. He identified what the concerns are. We met with the representative of CN May 16th, and we explained to them the concern that we have. We are still working with them to identify, like they have identified the problem to them, and they are coming back with some sort of solution to it. So it's an ongoing discussions with them.
So hopefully it won't be too long. We get some kind of an idea of where we stand.
That's the intent.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
As far as an evacuation plan, there is one in existing as we speak, and the evacuation plan is that the people are supposed to evacuate via the Welland Canal, Seaways, east side Hollage Road, and head towards Welland. There's a gate at that Hollage Road as we speak, but there's supposed to be a key to that gate in the Port Robinson Fire Hall, and maybe Mr. Dixon can confirm that for us and bring it back to us at a later date.
So, Mr. Mayor, just to confirm, that's going south towards Welland? Not,
Yeah, south towards Welland.
because I believe there was an unopened road going towards Allenburg also, but there's a car compound there now that's blocking the road, so.
I think at the time, the people who put it together were all professionals.
Yeah. Okay, appreciate it. Thank
Fire
you.
departments, there was, ambulance folks, there was, a lot of people who decided on that, but that could change, Maybe Mr. Dixon can confirm what I've said. Maybe something has changed and I don't know about it.
Through you, Mr. Worship. At this time, no, nothing's changed. We still head down towards Welland, actually. That seems to be the safest option at this point. I can come back and explore other ones, but at this time, that's the safest option.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We have Councillor Ugolini with the statements by councillors.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CAO. Grass cutting, we brought that up, and we get a lot of complaints on grass cutting. So then if they don't comply, we go in and cut the grass. The problem we're having is repeat offenders. So now we're getting the same phone calls for the same addresses. So I'm wondering is once we know addresses where they're not complying, could we put them on a list that we go and in our tours follow up on these properties so we don't have to wait for residents to have to complain again? So if we could be proactive, and as we do our rounds and we see this property we cited and now it's back up again, and we can deal with it before it becomes a complaint. Thank you.
I just want to ask a question on that. Do we do that in-house, or do we hire a consultant to come in and cut the grass? Anybody know? Contract it out? Okay, thank you. That's all I wanted to know.
And then the fees are put on their, taxes.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Thank you, Councillor. I'll call for any notices of motions. Okay, as far as my notice of motions from 2 weeks ago, I've put them off till next week, and I'll bring them forward for sure next week. So we're resolved into general committee. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Are there any declarations of interest? We have no delegations. And I'll call for reports to be brought forward in consent. And can I get a mover for the reports in consent? Councillor Ugolini. Speakers to any of the consent items? Seeing none, I'll call a question on the 2 consent items. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We'll move into our discussion reports, PWSC 2018-18, Thorold South Sanitary Sewer and Water Main Replacement Budget Overrun. The council approved the budget overrun is $650,000 to be funded from the Sewer Reserve Fund, $500,000, and from the Water Reserve Fund, $150,000 for the completion of the Thorold South Sanitary Sewer and Water Main Replacement Contract. And I need a mover for the report. Counselor Neal moving the report, and I have like a discussion from our staff on it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. During the construction process, we've run into some difficulties with buried infrastructure and buried materials that have not acted the way we would have liked, and have come to some difficulties and need to have the $650,000 to finish up the project and have it all done by the end of July.
Are there any questions? Counselor Neal. Counselor Neal and Counselor Hanley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. We ordered the contract back a year ago, July, and the actual project didn't start, I guess, until February of this year. And you stated unforeseen circumstances, soil, and so on. So my first question is, why weren't council aware, and why didn't you bring it forward, say, July 18th, in October, November, that we're having problems with the soil or whatever else you were having problems with this particular project? This is the first time I've heard about it myself. Maybe other councils have heard about it before, but this is the first time I've heard about it. In relative terms, the increase that we're looking at here is worse than the Burgoyne Bridge fiasco. I mean, going from a $1.1 million project up to almost $1.8 million is unbelievable. I mean, we have to go ahead and do this if we want the project completed, but Thorold South has been there for a long time. They've had buildings built and things done on those soils for a long time. I mean, in our records, we should have some sort of information regarding the soil content in Thorold South in the area that we're putting in the pipes. And as far as utilities are concerned, most of the utilities are ours. There is the gas, but most of the utilities are ours. So I don't see, if there was a problem that you didn't come back to council to help us deal with it, whether it's take the contract out of that particular contractor's hands or whatever it was. And now all of a sudden you come and you're asking for this. Certainly we have reserves to look after this, so the impact on this current budget, there won't be an impact. But for future projects that we're looking at, getting money from the feds and the province and doing a lot of other things in Thorold, we won't have this particular money to go ahead and do that. So my question back to you is why did it take so long for you to come forward and give us the great information that we see in front of us?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, some of the problems were minor in nature at the beginning, and as you said, the construction didn't start until February. The problems were discovered during the construction process, and trying to get a handle on the scope of what the entire overrun was going to be, so we only had to come once instead of twice was our game plan.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, through you to the presenter. Wouldn't you or the contractor at least look at what the soil composition was before they started the project? I mean, hire consultants and go through and do that type of thing long before February? I mean, this project didn't start till February. I don't know why they didn't start it till February, but maybe you can answer that question too, is why it took so long to start the project. You know, what broke down in this whole scenario? Because I don't want to see this happen again.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, some of the difficulties we ran into were very much related to certain composition of soil. So it was very soft and muddy in some locations, which is not usually what we expect under our roads. Our roads are usually very, and so some of this information came up as a bit of a surprise, and there was some geotechnical information given in that area, but seemed to miss some of these low spots that had some difficulties with the soils. And we found a bunch of materials in there, like there was some concretes in there that was put in to help seal up some pipes and stuff like that. Part of the reason for all these problems was that, exactly as you said, Thorold South has been there for a long time, and these pipes were very old, and so we had laterals and so forth that were blind laterals that we needed to abandon and do some investigating on, and like I said, we had these soil issues that came up unexpectedly.
I'll let other councillors talk on this.
Councillor Hanley.
Yes, actually, Councillor Neal hit on the one soil bore testing I was going to ask for, because I know that soils come in 3 to 4 types as to knowing your shoring, what you're expecting. My question is, it states here in regards to that conflicts with existing utilities not identified. Well, someone must have been responsible for identifying such utilities, and can I ask, why is it existing utilities were not identified, seeing that we usually hire a company that goes out there, locator companies, and would identify these? Are you telling me that the companies that we hired did not identify them and we ran into them after the fact? And if so, who would be responsible for such mishap?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's exactly what I'm saying, is that we ran into some specifically gas services that crossed the road right over top of our pipes, and they were not marked and were not located. I guess PVS would be responsible for that in some way.
But see, there again though, see, we give right-of-ways to utilities to go onto city property to install utilities, and when they do such, they give us a blueprint, has-built, they call it, and what I've done, and those should have been identified or should have been on record as something that had been installed previously. So that's of a concern for me, that due diligence wasn't done. On that note, if I could, Mr. Mayor, through you, ask, do we have other projects, as I'm concerned as Mr. Neal is, that we can expect the same as is happening here today? Because my research has shown me that, and I haven't gotten an update on it, but we had actually asked for a report here to council, and we had several projects in which we had budgeted for in 2016 and 17 that still have not completed. Can I ask you through Mr. Mayor, through the appropriate staff member, do we in fact still have projects that we budgeted for in 2016 that are still not completed or have been canceled?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe there's a couple more. There's one that we did receive some money from the federal government for a storm sewer repair, and then there's a water main down in Port Robinson that we are in the process of canceling.
Okay, thank you. My concern is, Mr. Mayor, we changed our budgeting process in the city so that we could tender these projects in a reasonable amount of time to have them addressed. And I do believe even in 2017, so here we are going to into an election year where the term of this council has approved projects in 2017, 2016, and possibly 2018 that will never see completion because we're backlogged. So I have concerns just like Councillor Neal does. We're going to find ourselves in this predicament again. We need to do something to address it before we get to where we are today, because I believe one of the biggest causes is the increase of construction costs over time, not just the fact of finding existing utilities or ground soil conditions. That's my personal view.
Thank you, Councillor. I have Councillor Ugolini, Whalen, and Longo.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, a couple of questions. The engineering, design, and geotechnical, are we recouping any costs from that? Because if, you know, that's part of what we pay for in the design phase and geotechnical so we don't run into these problems. And if we paid these costs, what are we getting in return for not resolving issues that arise such as this?
To get return from our consulting engineers on such a thing, we've been talking to our lawyer about trying to put in a lawsuit, I guess, against them to recoup some of those costs.
Okay, so we are working in that area.
Absolutely.
Okay, two other questions. There's, how much future work in that same area do we have left to do, or we're pretty well done?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we, based on the work that we've done, we tore up the road pretty good. We're going to let it settle a little, and we're going to come back in and fix the road. Plus, there's that storm sewer project, as I suggested earlier, that needs to be in the same general area.
Okay, so the road remediation, is that part of these costs that we're looking at here?
No, this is just, in this contract, we only have trench restoration, although the trench in some locations got pretty wide. So there'll be some, we're only putting base asphalt in for some of these roads, and we'll come back under our asphalt program and put some of these.
So are we gonna incur more costs on the roadside as well? I guess that's my question.
Yes and no. We never budgeted for the road in the first place, and when we come back in and asphalt it, yes, we will do it under our regular program.
The reason I asked is I was up there when I went to the fishing derby, and those roads are, because of the trenching, it's pretty, it's in pretty rough shape, so they're gonna need quite a remediation to get them back in shape.
Yeah, and that will be done as part of this project. It'll become drivable again as part of this project.
Thank you.
Councillor Whalen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Ugolini answered my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to engineering. Just have a couple of questions. I want some clarity here. The construction firm, although they did start late, they're not responsible for any of these additional costs, are they?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, all the changes that have happened have been vetted through our consulting engineer, and we've agreed that these are the ones that we need to take some responsibility for. Okay, so basically the construction firm is doing their job. They've run into difficulties that they weren't made aware of. But it says we're adding $650,000 to the cost of the job from the end of June to the end of July. Is this cost $650,000 just for the next month, or is it an ongoing cost that's gone back into February? No, it's for the moving forward. It's to help us finish up the rest of the. So they're doing $650,000 worth of work in 1 month? Yes, sir. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the engineering, the consultant we hire, we paid the consultant I'm not sure what we paid. In that, they did geotechnical work? Through you, Mr. Mayor, they relied on some of the geotechnical that we took from previous projects. We just did Mary Street, so we used that. So the responsibility for this cost overrun is engineering and consulting, not construction? Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. Okay. My comment here, Mr. Mayor, is that obviously we have to have the work done. We need to pay the construction firm. But I think we need some sort of report here, a detailed report from staff explaining what went wrong here and who's responsible. Because if in fact, if it is a consulting firm that we've hired, we may have to take recourse. I'm not saying it is, but we need to find out where the problem lies, and we need to address it. So possibly there could be some compensation for the city, and possibly this will eliminate this sort of problem going forward. That would just be a request that I would ask for.
I have two more, Councillor, I have two more speakers. I'm going to give you, I'm going to ask you to put some kind of if you would put some kind of a motion together with regards to that thought, and I'll allow Councillor Payon and Councillor Hanley to speak in the meantime, and I'll come back to you. I have Councillor Payon.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I think Councillor Ugolini asked earlier about the unforeseen delays that caused the project to be started 7 months after it was approved. I'm not clear what those, I'm not sure if the there was an answer to that. I understand part of the reasons why there's extra cost, but why was the project delayed for 7 months?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it was a combination of issues internally, finalizing the design and trying to make sure that this didn't happen. And then also the contractor wasn't available to start right when we awarded it in the first place.
So part of the delay is because the contractor wasn't ready, and we didn't know that.
That's right.
At the time that they wouldn't be ready. The reason I ask is because I think someone else brought up earlier, in the report, there's 2 reasons why there's an increase in cost. One, the geotechnical was wrong. But somebody earlier asked about, I think it was Councillor Hanley, who said that there are costs associated with delays. Is there any way of estimating how much of an increase in cost there is because of the delay? And if the contractor wasn't ready, should they not absorb part of those costs? If they aren't ready to go and they give us a quote saying, here you go, we're going to do this project for you, they know when we want it done. If there is a cost associated with delay and they say, sorry, we're not ready, shouldn't they absorb some of that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's absolutely the case. They would absorb that, and there's only a minor portion of this that is delay.
Okay. And lastly, I have so it seems like the geotechnical work didn't identify the major problem that has caused this increase. And there's some talk of how maybe through legal means we might be able to get that back. When we sign a contract for such geotechnical work, no one can give a 100% guarantee, but is there anything in the contract that guarantees their work? When an engineer signs off to building a bridge, they guarantee that it's safe and so on. Is there anything written within the contract that says that the geotechnical work is up to snuff, that we can rely on it, that it's reliable? Because if you can have $15,000 for geotechnical work and then have this kind of error in knowing what was going to be encountered during the construction, that's pretty big error. Is there no guarantee that is written within the contract?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, consulting engineers, geotechnical and so forth carry errors and omissions insurance. Okay. So there is opportunities, but the only way to access that money is through legal actions. Oh,
so they do carry insurance, and potentially that's where we could get some money back. Just lastly, so the major increase in costs is because they didn't identify the material that was, once they dug, it wasn't, I assume they did core samples.
They did some, or they relied on some that we had from previous projects, and we just missed the spots that were.
And the core samples would not have identified the, wow, okay. All right, thank you.
Mr. Strojanovich.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just I wanted to add, and just for clarity here, the geotechnical component here of $15,000 plus HST. Now this isn't for geotechnical services that were completed as part of the design. This is the geotechnical services that are provided during construction. So ensuring that we have compaction for the pipe, for making sure that the road base is compacted, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the geotechnical cost that are identified in the project. And just for clarity again, and I came into this one at the very tail end of this, but as many of you have noted, there are some geotechnical concerns that have not been addressed, at least from my perspective, satisfactorily through the design. And as has been indicated, we are in discussions with legal to look at any and all remedies to recover any and all cost overruns as a result of design errors. You can be assured of that. So we'll be looking at every single dollar spent, and that's being spent as a result of what would potentially be design errors, but we'll come to that conclusion at a later date. But please understand that we will absolutely be looking at all means and measures to recoup costs through either errors and omissions insurance or through the courts.
To that, Mr. Stojanovich, I just want to jump in, guys. Were there any borehole core testing samples taken throughout the area?
Through you, Mr. Aaron, my understanding is there was no boreholes done as part of this project. So for the type of project and the location of where this project is, that to me is a pretty big red flag that
Huge.
would speaks volumes right there. So that was one of my very big concerns when I first, got caught wind of this project. And again, given the scale of the project, location, that wouldn't be something that I would typically see from a consulting firm providing design services for a municipality to have any level of confidence in terms of their design and in terms of their estimates of what can be constructed given the dollars. So there's a lot of oddities about this one that I'm seeing, and I think many of you are seeing that as well.
Okay, thank you. I have Councillor Hanley again, then Councillor Neal, then I'll go back to Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was wanting to know if I could put a motion forward for a report to come to council on all outstanding projects that were budgeted for in 2016 and 17, and if any costs that have been incurred for projects which have not commenced in regards to consultation, design, and pre-engineering costs. The only reason I'm asking for this, Mr. Mayor, is that there's an upcoming election in 2018, and I think all should be prepared as to what may be ahead of us with a new term of council starting in 2019, not only ourselves, but any possible candidates out there.
Councillor, right now what you're asking for has nothing to do with this specific report, but
I'll put a
we can waive the rules.
Well, I'm
under
asking,
these circumstances, I would.
seeing that we're only going to have one more meeting in July, one in August, the report was to come forward in September. There's an election in October, and I'm just wanting that everybody has, we don't want to be blindsided as I feel we may have been here, and that give opportunity for information to be brought forward.
I need a councillor to put a motion on the floor to waive the rules. Councillor Whalen, and all those in favor? Okay, opposed, that's carried. Can you repeat your motion?
That a report come to council of all outstanding projects in regards to 2016 and 17 budgets, and if any costs that have been incurred for projects which have not commenced in regards to consultation, design, and pre-engineering.
Okay. I'll ask, how do I do this? Would it be an amendment to the existing? No, I can't amend the existing report. We bailed from the one report.
No.
Okay, I'm just trying to get a ruling here.
It's separate, so this is going to say
separate.
Carried, then right below here I'm going to put moved by. Item.
Okay.
So it's two separate.
Then we're going back to the other.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. No problem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'll ask the clerk to read the motion. Read your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The motion on the floor is that staff be directed to prepare a report about all outstanding projects from the 2016-2017 budget and all costs associated.
Thank you.
Speakers to that motion, Councillor Neal, Councillor Whalen.
Yes, I was going to bring forward, because I think Councillor Longo will have a motion, but to do an internal review or audit of the specific project that we were talking about tonight, but maybe it should be more general, and maybe we might just do your motion, Councillor Hanley, to include it as a review or audit of our projects, including the one that we're talking about tonight. Does the motion sort of read that? It doesn't read that.
Councilor, can we move forward to get this one out of the way and then get Councilor Longo's motion on the floor?
Yeah, I'll wait.
And then I'll come back to you. If
Yeah.
maybe we may not even have to do your
Exactly.
motion.
Okay.
Okay, if Councilor Whalen to speak on this new motion.
I'll wait till we come back in, Mr. Sandy. It's
Yeah,
in the
no
same
sp-
discussion.
Okay, then I call on a question on Councilor Hanley's motion.
No, if it's that, before
Or
the vote-
do you want to speak
Yes,
to that
please.
one? Okay,
Please.
go ahead.
To just get some clarity in there, is this motion going to include what's been approved, the dollars, and what has been spent to that project so far? Is that clarity of it?
Nothing to do with this project. Only to
That's
do
right.
with projects that were budgeted for in 2016 and 17 that have not yet commenced.
So just to clarify, anything that has been approved, what it was budgeted for, and what has been spent to date. Is that the case?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other speakers to Councilor Hanley's motion? I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, we're back to our original PWSC 2018-18 Thorold South Sanitary Sewer and Water Main Replacement Budget Overrun. And last speaker I have Councilor Longo, who has a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I'd like to put forward a motion regarding this report. And I'd like the motion to be that senior staff prepare a report investigating the said project and all parties involved, including but not limited to city staff, the city engineering department, the hired consultant used for the project, and the construction contractor, as to the reason for the increased cost, and to investigate any responsibility for errors and/or omissions that have led to the increase in the final cost.
I'll let our clerk type this out and then have her repeat it. You're fast.
Councilor Longo, can you please repeat it? I just want to make sure I get everything.
Best. I'd like a senior staff report investigating the said project and all parties involved, including but not limited to city staff, the city engineering department, the consultant used for the project, and the construction contractor, as to the reason for the increased costs, and to investigate any responsibility for errors and/or omissions that have led to the increased final cost. Same thing I said first time.
Do you want to hear it one more time from the clerk? Okay, that's the motion on the floor, and that's a different motion from the original motion.
Can I just do a point of order? I mean,
I
the
know.
original motion is just to whether or not we're going to approve the budget overrun. How about we could just get that out of the way? And
I'm trying to see if that could be made as an amendment to the original motion.
not really, because it's a budget overrun.
Okay.
You know, I think we know we have to vote for it.
I'll
Otherwise, the
hear from
project
Councilor
stops.
Longo first on it.
Mr. Mayor, my intention was, at the beginning, I said, I believe we need to pay the contractor because the work needs to be done. My motion is a follow-up to this issue here. So however we would like to proceed, whether we approve this report first.
I'm going to agree with Councilor Pion, and let's go back to the original and vote on it, and it's in front of you. We're either going to pay $650,000 more, or we're going to stop the project altogether and not pay him. So what's, I'll call a question. All those in favor of the report? That's carried unanimously. Back to Councilor Longo's. Are there any speakers to his motion? Councilor Whalen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I was wondering if I can ask for a friendly amendment. Do we add the CFO's line on there, what it does to our 2 reserves that we're depleting, whether we're going to be required to pay this back come budget time next year? I think we have a minimum requirement in those reserves, or maybe get some clarification on that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the sewage capital reserve has an uncommitted balance of roughly $2.3 million. And the water has a balance of 3.5, so I think you're okay to pay it out of those.
That's
without
great.
replenishing.
That's fine. Thank you.
Any other speakers to Councillor Longo's motion? I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, PWCS 2018-24, Arena and Sports Field Booking Policies. That's Mr. Dre, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendation is that Council approve the revised Arena Policy 1000-2 to come to effect July 4th, 2018, as well as that Council approve the new Parks and Sports Field Policy 900-10 effective July 4th, 2018.
Movers for the report, Councillor Hanley.
So move the report, Mr. Mayor.
Speakers, Councillor Ugolini.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I said in the meeting that Curtis set up with the user groups, and the feedback was very positive. And overall, they were very receptive, so I have no issue supporting this. I think it's been well put together and well researched, and so I'll be supporting it.
Any other speakers? Councillor Neal.
Just like Councillor Ugolini just mentioned, I think we're working towards making the arena as fully booked as possible, which creates the revenue necessary to run the arenas. And I think this is a great report.
Any other speakers? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. PWCS 2018-25, 2018 recreation rates. Again, I believe that's Mr. Dre.
It is. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendation is that report PWCS 2018-25 be approved and that the proposed arena, parks, and pool rental fees be adopted as of July 4th, 2018, and that the new updated fees be included in the corporate fees schedule. Number 2, that policy 900-08, user fees for swimming lessons, and policy number 1000-03, schedule of fees be removed.
Can I get a mover for the report? Councillor Ugolini.
Report.
Speakers, Councillor Ugolini.
Thank you. Again, I want to thank Curtis for the report. I put this forward if you remember, about a year ago to review our user rates, because we were, at my feelings and doing research, we were one of the most, if not the most expensive in Niagara. This breaks down the rates, and again, in the meetings with the user groups, they were receptive to the changes, and I think it's an excellent report. You know what I said, I'd rather see our peak rate even lowered, but it's a good place to start, and we'll review it as we move forward, and we'll see what our total usage is over this year, but based on what I'm seeing so far, it looks like we're moving in the right direction. And what I really liked at the meeting was the user groups working together and talking about when there's issues with ice and playoffs and that, and they all were receptive to work together, and everybody's pulling in the same direction, so it's all positive. Again, I'll be supporting this.
Are there any other speakers? Just a comment. Mr. Dre, how did you get all those groups in one room together?
They're very engaged, let's just say that, in the Thorold community, which is great to see.
Well, congratulations. Okay, any other speakers? I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Oh, I just did that one. And PWCS
2018-26, Downtown Parking Strategy Update.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's recommended that the downtown parking strategy be modified to add or to change the the 8 parking spots in front of, on Claremont Street, in front of 8 Claremont, such that 2 are handicapped and 6 are 15-minute only. To modify 6 spots on Albert Street in front of 18 and 20, 24 and 26, such that the eastmost are 2 handicaps and the other 4 remain 15 minutes. To add 2 15-minute parking spaces on Sullivan Avenue in front of 2 Sullivan Avenue. To have 1 parking spot removed from Sullivan Avenue east of the entrance of the Thorold Community Credit Union for safety concerns, and that the traffic and parking bylaw number 150/2012 be amended to recognize these modifications at a future council meeting. So it concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Dunsmore. Can I get a mover for the report? Councilor Ugolini? Speakers to the report. Councilor Neal.
On Albert Street East, one of your recommendations is for 15-minute parking for 4 spots on Albert Street in front of 18, 24, and 26 Albert Street. Did the lawyer's office and the doctor's office agree to that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no. The doctor's office are the one making the recommendation, and they wanted it to be a half-hour request. They wanted it to be a half-hour parking spot. We went to the parking committee and discussed this thoroughly, and the parking committee recommended the
15 minutes, eh?
Is that the Albert Street one you're talking about, Fred?
Yeah, the Albert Street one. It doesn't compute for my own. I mean, for 15 minutes to go to a lawyer's office or a doctor's office, I don't think so. 30 minutes, maybe.
Councilor Whalen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. During the parking deliberations, I believe we were asked for staff to go and consult with these retailers in that area. If I'm not mistaken, maybe Councilor Ugolini can back me up on that or not. So to put that one in there, like Councilor Neal just said, that's the thing, is pushing the extremes on there. So that one I don't agree with. Like I say, to go to a lawyer's office in 15 minutes, good luck.
Yeah. The lawyer wants to make his $300 to $500 an hour. He wants you in there for an hour.
So I wonder if we could, I discussed it, so I can't ask for a deferral now, but I'd like to see that go back before we pass this motion.
Okay. How about, okay, because I've got one I want to pull out of here too. I want more discussions on. You want the Albert Street one pulled for further discussion, obviously.
Yes, please.
I want the Claremont one pulled for obvious reasons, certain reasons that I will explain to you. So I would suggest that if you refer that section back to staff for further discussion.
Sounds good. Okay.
And I'm asking you to put that motion forward. Well, let's vote on, we've got 1, 2, 3, well, 3. 4, right? 4. So let's vote on each one of them separately.
That's good.
On yours, Councillor Whalen, you want to refer it back to staff for further discussion?
Well, if it's
that way, you're not saying yes, you're not defeating it, and there's no chance of it being. Because I can see where you're coming from. There's some things that have to be changed.
Yeah, I'd appreciate if we could just defer that to.
So I would suggest you refer it back to staff for further discussions. You may want to call staff and both you and Fred and discuss that
Yeah, Terry and I. Terry and I were on the parking committee.
Yeah, okay.
for further discussion? Some fine tuning, we'll say.
No,
Go ahead, Terry.
No, we can bring it back to the parking committee and for further discussion. See, just to give you some history on what happened there. The problem with bylaw enforcement, and I could see where they're coming from, is right now we have two types of parking, 2 hours free, right? Then we have the paid parking lot. Then we have 15-minute drop-off zones. So they didn't want to institute a third one that said half-hour parking, which I can fully understand because now we're complicating the whole downtown. So it should be either 15 or 2 hours. We got to stick with what we're doing down there. We either leave it 2 hours free or we go 15 minutes or a combination of both. But to implement a third half hour is just very confusing and it just muddles the water. So I think that we could send it back to the committee to look at that from that perspective. I think is a good idea.
Okay, are you okay with that, Tim, referring it back to?
I know it has to go back to, if at our last parking committee meeting, we asked that the staff go and survey these people in this area to see, this might be fine, but we should give them the chance to say yes or no if the people are affected by this.
So you'd rather have it just go right back to staff?
Yes, please, because we've already had a good discussion on this. Like, there's not only lawyers, some other retailers in that location also that might be affected. So we can just get like confirmation that everybody's okay from the retail aspect of it, then it'll be fine, yeah. So rather than prolong it, putting it back to the parking committee meeting, if we just get staff to just check with these people, if it's okay, fine. So we just asked, like I say, just defer that till we get more information, in other words, rather than defeating or passing it, yeah.
Okay. So the motion on the floor is refer it back to staff. And I'll call the question. We shouldn't have been debating that.
Yes.
All those in favor? Opposed?
Mayor, that's just
carried.
number 2, correct? Just number 2.
That's for item number 2. Are you going to call a motion on item number 1 then?
Which is Claremont.
Yeah, which is this motion here.
Yeah, I've got problems with item number 1, which is down on Claremont Street and along the roadway that goes in back of Farm Aviva, which is a one-way. I'm going to stop discussing it because I want to refer that also back to staff, because this is all coming back to the parking committee afterwards. So I want to refer that back to staff for a discussion, and staff's quite aware of what I'll be discussing about that one specific area. So I'm asking for number 1 to be referred back to staff, and I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. So we 1 and 2 and 3.
Other 2, are you going to call question number 3?
Terry, do we ask for feedback on that?
To Sullivan. Okay, number 3 is that two parking spot in front of number 2 Sullivan Avenue. And speakers to that one, I'll call a question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. That's in front of Dr. Miletta's, I believe.
Further up by the pizza joint. In front of the bamboo hair salon.
Yeah. And to have 1 parking spot removed on the south side of Sullivan Avenue, east of the entrance to the Thorold Community Credit Union for safety concerns. Speakers to that. Go ahead, Councilor.
Just give some clarification there. The parking spot in question is right up next to the driveway. There's parking on both sides, so anybody going out there leaves their life in their hands because you don't have any view either way. So this would be the one closest to Sullivan, or
Would this be benefiting your?
No, it's a safety feature, no conflict there at all.
Strictly safety feature?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay. Continue. Sorry.
So that's the clarification of it, it's just to give some safety and get some sight lines going towards Front Street, where right now it's pretty hazardous coming in or out of that parking lot.
Councilor Ugolini.
Yeah, that was well debated at the meeting, and but this was all encompassing. encompassing too about moving forward and getting lines painted on, you know, the parking spots painted there. So we could utilize more parking spots, because if there's painted lines, then people will park within that lines, and we figure that will gain parking spots rather than having haphazard parking. Is that progressing as far as the painting contract?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we are in the process of getting a painting contractor on board.
Okay, I'll call a question on that. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And that covers that report.
Mr. Mayor, there's other parts to the report, although they're the recommendations we've done, but there's another section of the report that I would like to comment on.
Okay.
And that is.
Carry on, go ahead.
The third one down, about the 9 parking spots in Lot 1 on the south side. And it just states that the staff is not recommending to create these spots in this area will create difficulty in enforcement. Well, I think we should be looking at parking downtown as, we have to solve the enforcement part of it, but I think it's for the people that live and work and play downtown. And I think we need those 9 spots in that area. So I would like to send that back to the parking committee to be discussed further.
Or staff.
Well, through staff, for staff to take a look at that again, because we're going to do the towpath project anyway sometime in the near future. We need to, I think we need to look at that a little further, because I think we need the 8 or 9 spots in that parking lot besides the long-term parking for the people at that end.
Okay.
Can I make a comment?
So the motion is to refer that back to staff also. Tim, you want to?
I could probably answer the question for him. Yeah, it was initially proposed.
I'm trying to get this referred back. There's no debating a referral.
Once I talk, what we discussed in the meeting, might not need to go back to staff. Originally, the plan was to put the 9 spots
I'll let
inside.
it go this time, but not.
Pardon me?
I'll let it go, but I'm not going to make it happen.
I just answered questions, so staff won't have the work to do, but whatever you prefer.
Go ahead.
Okay, the original proposal was to take 9 spots on the south end of the long-term parking and make it short-term 2-hour parking. So the parking committee made recommendations. We take those 9 spots and put them outside the berm to make it a little bit clearer for bylaw.
State that in any of that.
No, but that's what the proposal is.
Doesn't state that. So I want it referred back. And then
Yeah,
come back.
you're going to refer it back, okay.
Mr. Mayor, they can come back
Okay,
with a
I'll call a
clarification.
question on that. All those in favor? Opposed? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, I'll move on to the next report. PDS 2018-17, reallocate planning capital project monies. PDS. Mr. Darbyson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendations of the report are that Director of Planning and Development Services report PDS 2018-17 be supported, and 2, that the General Committee approve the reallocation of $60,000 from the Urban Design and Infill Intensification Study to the refinement and update of the official plan and zoning bylaw project totaling $90,000. That concludes the report.
I need a mover for the report. Councillor Hanley.
So move report, Mr. Mayor.
Speakers to the report. Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the Manager of Planning. Could you give us an update on when the new comprehensive zoning bylaw project will be complete?
We're readjusting, through you, Mr. Mayor, we're readjusting our timelines based on current staff work. We're anticipating Q1 2019.
That's it. Any other speakers? Councillor Ugolini.
If possible, can we expedite that quicker? Because this is, and it's through no fault, and I'm not putting blame on anyone, because I know everybody's stretched to the limits, but if we could move that forward sooner, it'd be much appreciated. Thank you.
Any other speakers? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We have nothing for in-camera. Motion arising from in-camera, none. Motions to ratify recommendations from General Committee.
Counselor Hanley.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Pion, that council adopt those items approved by the General Committee on July 3rd, 2018.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Bylaws. First reading of the bylaws. Councilor Whalen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded Councilor Neal, that leave be given to introduce the following bylaws. Bylaw number 79-2018, Bylaw 80-2018, Bylaw 81-2018, Bylaw 82-2018, and Bylaw 83-2018. Will that now be read a first time?
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Final reading of bylaws. Councilor Ugolini.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Neal, that the bylaws just read a first time be read a second and third time and do pass, and that the mayor and clerk do sign and seal the same. Any rule of this council to the contrary notwithstanding.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Council, committee, and board meeting minutes. Councilor Longo.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Neal, that council receive and file the minutes of the committees of council and local boards as presented.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Adjournment. Councilor Pion.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Ugolini, that this meeting is hereby adjourned at 7:32 p.m.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Before everybody goes, I'm just going to ask the clerk for an update to when our next meeting will be in August, so everybody's aware of it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have one meeting July 17th, and then it's the, I think, August 7th? August the 7th?
August 7th, just to make sure everybody's aware of that.
One more in July, one in August?
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Good.